Okay, go.
This plaque at the front of our sanctuary lists the names of the men from the St. Andrews and Knox congregations, separate congregations at the time, who gave the ultimate sacrifice, their lives, so that we could have our freedom. They died in World War I and World War II, and the average age at the time of their deaths was 23. I'd like to tell you a little bit about each young man, so they won't just be a name on a plaque. From World War I, Corporal James Ball, Canadian Expeditionary Force. James was born in 1885 in England, and he came to Fort Erie to work on the railroad. He enlisted in 1914 with the Army and served with the 19th Battalion. He was wounded in France and died of his wounds at the age of 33. Lieutenant Donald Gordon McLean, Royal Flying Corps, born in Bridgeburg, which is the north end of Fort Erie, and went to Phipps Street School, which is now Roseaton. He went to Sunday school at Knox, was a Boy Scout, and worked with the railroad. In 1917, he was shipped to Italy with the Flying Corps, the 45th Squadron of the RAF. After a successful dogfight, he was hit by enemy anti-aircraft fire and crashed just as he was headed for our side of the lines. He was buried in Italy. He was 19. Private James Leslie Ewell. James lived on Jarvis Street. He went to Phipps Street School and Knox Sunday School, and then he worked on the Grand Trunk Railroad. He enlisted in the Army and served in France with the 75th Battalion. He received the Military Medal for bravery, but died of his wounds. He's buried in France. He was 21. Private Morris Roy Bunn, Canadian Expeditionary Force. Morris lived on Jarvis Street and enlisted in the 58th 2nd Central Ontario Regiment. He was sent to the trenches of France with his battalion and was killed in action. He's buried in France and he died at the age of 23. World War I, 66,914 Canadians died in this war at battles like the Somme, Vimy Ridge, and Passchendaele, and many others. At the dedication ceremony of the newly built Vimy Ridge Memorial in 1936, a mother from Winnipeg, Manitoba attended. She had lost 8 sons in that awful war. Can you imagine? 8 sons. The Vimy Ridge Monument has the names of 11,285 men, Canadians, whose bodies were never recovered and have no grave. 6,984 names are on the Menin Gate, whose bodies have also never been found. 100,000 men remain beneath the soil of France. And the farmers say when the poppies bloom and the rains come, it pushes the bones to the surface. From World War II, Flying Officer Alan Wilson Trope, Royal Canadian Air Force. He was born in Fort Erie, attended Douglas School and Fort Erie Secondary School. He was a member of St. Andrews, was a scout, and he worked for the Canadian Customs. He enlisted in 1940 and trained as a bomb aimer and navigator. In 1941, on a bombing raid to bomb the submarine pens at Saint-Nazaire, France, his aircraft took a direct hit in the front section and Alan was killed. In his honor, the Fort Erie Air Cadets were formed. Their official title is the 332nd Allen Troop Squadron. He's buried in France. He was 33. Corporal Lloyd George Erdman, Army. He lived at one point, I was told, in the house I grew up in across the street at the corner of Highland and Central. He also lived on Robinson Street, and he went to Phipps Street School and Fort Erie Secondary School. He was a member of Knox. He was active in the Young Peoples, and he was a scout. He enlisted in 1942 and served in France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. In Germany, Lloyd was directing his driver over a road not yet cleared of mines. They hit one, and the resulting explosion killed him. He's buried in Holland. He was 23. Flight Sergeant Harry Ray Thyrett, RAF. Born in Fort Erie, lived on Birdie Street, went to Douglas School and Fess. He went to Sunday school at St. Andrews. He worked at Irvin Air Chute. He enlisted in 1943 and went to gunnery school, got his wings and was posted to England. He was attached to the RAF Squadron 166 as a mid-upper gunner on a Lancaster bomber. On December the 4th, 1944, on his 18th bombing mission, the aircraft was shot down. All were killed but one. He's buried in Germany. Thyroid Avenue was named after him. He died at the age of 20. Sergeant Earl Douglas White, RCAF. He lived at 224 Emmerich Avenue, went to Phipps Street School, Sunday school here at Knox, Young People's at Knox, and he went to Fort Erie Secondary School and worked at Fleet Industries. He enlisted in the RAF. He was attached to the 115th Squadron as a tail end Charlie, or a tail gunner, on a Lancaster bomber. On a bombing raid over Germany, the plane was hit by enemy flak. He attempted to get back to base in England, but they lost altitude and crashed into a farmhouse. White Avenue is named after Earl. He's buried in England. He was 21. Private Robert Renwick Wallace, Army. He lived on Ellen Street. He worked at Fleet and played on their hockey and baseball teams. He attended Knox Church. He enlisted in 1944 and went to England and then Holland. On April the 14th, 1945, on a house-by-house, room-by-room search operation for snipers, Robert was killed by one of those snipers. He's buried in Holland. He was only 19. Gunner Francis Henry Walden, Army. He lived on Jarvis Street and he went to Phipps Street School, Fess. He was a member of Knox, member of the 1st Fort Erie Boy Scout Troop, and worked at Fleet. He enlisted in 1942 and went to England, where he joined the 19th Field Regiment, Royal Canadian Artillery. On June the 10th, 1944, 4 days after the D-Day invasions, in Normandy, Frank wrote his parents, "The worst is over. Here I am on French soil. From now on, it's going to be one big picnic." 11 weeks later, he was killed in action at point 195 north of Fillet. He was hit by enemy tank fire. He's buried in Bretteville-sur-Lay Canadian War Cemetery in France. Walden Boulevard was named after him. Wayne and I saw his grave in France, and it's hard when you see the name of a young man who attended our church on a tombstone in France. Frank died at the age of 21. World War II. In the combined field of operations, 45,300 Canadians died. We also remember those who died in other wars and peacekeeping expeditions. We also remember the soldiers on the Mather Arch Memorial, all of whom are from Fort Erie. The poppy is a symbol to remember those far from home, crossing troubled lands and threatening waters and dangerous skies. It's for the wounded and those who cared for them. It's for the dead and those who carried on without them. It's for those who came home with their memories. A poppy is for peace, lest we forget. A poppy is to remember. So please support the Royal Canadian Legion and buy a poppy. We will now have the laying of the wreath.